Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Switch On. We took a little time off because of the holidays and also because there just wasn't that much interesting gaming news recently, but we're excited to be back. I'm your host, Ben Lamro, and as usual, I'm joined by two returning guests. Welcome back, Steven.
Hello.
And welcome back, Will.
Don't call it a comeback. Oh, you said welcome back. My bad.
I mean, I guess the words were all in there.
Indeed.
So this is going to be a little bit more of a laid-back, freeform sort of episode. No news section today. Instead, we're just going to be giving our impressions of Pokémon Sword and Shield. So we've done some episodes in the past where we broke down some of the pros and cons just based on the trailers and the general controversy surrounding these games. But now they're finally out, and we've had plenty of time to go hands-on with them. So it's time for us to give them some report cards. And we're gonna try to keep it sort of spoiler light. So we'll talk about, maybe through the first few gyms, but anything beyond that where we really get into story stuff, we'll go ahead and try to keep it vague. And with that said, let's just go ahead and dive in, starting with a quick summary of our thoughts on the game before we get a little deeper in. So Steven, why don't you let us know what's your general impressions of Sword and Shield?
Okay, so you have to keep in mind that I've been kind of really put off by the Pokemon games since about X and Y.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only really recently that I've started getting back into it with Let's Go Pikachu. With that in mind, I think Sword and Shield are some of the best Pokemon games we've ever gotten. They're easily... I don't know if they're the top of my favorites list, because let's be real, Gold and Sapphire are really good in my mind. But it's definitely top 3.
Okay. I don't know if I was expecting that high of praise from a longtime Pokemon hater. How about you, Will? What were your general impressions of Sword and Shield?
Right. So I am about 5 gyms in right now. #FakeFan. But I'm into it so far. I think there's definitely some flaws, especially when you take into account it being the first home console game, and there's a lot of valid criticisms to be made, although I think a lot of the rage is completely overblown still.
Yeah, the internet overreaction.
Yeah, all that said, I'm still really enjoying it so far. So, my big thing with Pokemon is I tend to get bored in the post game, so we'll see how that goes for me. But so far, I'm digging it.
Sure. Yeah, I have kind of mixed thoughts on it. Overall, I'm really enjoying myself. I think it's really fun. I think they've streamlined a lot of things that were sort of tedious about the series in the past. But at the same time, I think there are some very valid criticisms of it, and it feels like a game that didn't quite have enough development time. And when you're a company like Game Freak, there's no delay. It's this huge property where there's TV show and cards and movies and stuff tied up into it. So it's you got to hit that deadline. And I feel like it was rushed out the gate a little bit and a little bit undercooked.
Yeah, that's a really good point with all the different media franchises and platforms it entails. I hadn't thought about that at all. Smash gets all the time it needs, which miraculously Ultimate didn't get delayed. But yeah, with Pokemon, there's so many variables.
Yeah, and it's this big global launch too, where you're coordinating, commercials airing around the world, and some of this stuff has to be planned many months in advance. So it's if it turns out, oh hey, these bugs are taking a little longer to fix than we thought, or oh hey, we wanted to put this feature in, but we're running a little behind on schedule. Well, it's kind of just too bad. There's no delaying a Pokemon game.
Yeah, but we also live in a time now when a lot of that could, in theory, be patched in later on if they wanted to.
That's absolutely true. And, Game Freak in the past has kind of always gone with the, we'll release a third game, 2 years later that has extra features and stuff. But I would say maybe that doesn't fly in a 2019 world. But, I mean, it's Pokemon. It'll absolutely fly if they do that again. So let's get into some more specific stuff. You can't talk about Pokemon without talking about the actual Pokemon themselves. And so, of course, Sword and Shield, one of the big controversies is no national dex. They cut it down to just 400 Pokemon, and that's what you have to work with. So, has this been an issue for any of you guys? Did you feel like there's not enough variety, or have you been pretty satisfied with what you've encountered in Galar?
I've actually been really satisfied with it. I think I've never really felt the need to complete the decks. Like, that's just not my playstyle when it comes to Pokemon. And yet, Sword and Shield are the first time I've really felt like I need to. I'm actually like just under 50 away now. Most of it is either like really rare stuff that doesn't really spawn all that much, or it's Sword exclusives that I have to get from someone.
Hey, well, hit me up, because I need some Shield exclusives.
Gladly. But I think part of that was, it just got to a point where there were just so damn many that, just to put the time into that, it just wasn't worth it for me. I have way too much other stuff to be doing, and I can't sit there and afford to, put hundreds and hundreds of hours in trying to, get all these Pokemon. So I'm actually very excited, actually, that they knocked it down just for that reason alone.
There's, if you complete the decks in more recent games, you get the Shiny Charm, which increases your chance of finding shiny Pokemon. And, I'm trying to plug away to get to 400 so I can get that Shiny Charm. And I don't think I would even attempt if it was, in 1,000 plus Pokédex. I think I'd look at it and go, yeah, no way, I'm going to stop at like 100. But because 400's a more manageable number, I'm at like 270 or so and, planning to go the rest of the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I actually got really lucky. I got my first non-traded shiny ever in a Pokemon game.
Very nice.
I hatched it. It was a Trapinch. So I got my Flygon.
Oh, that's awesome. Flygon's been an absolute staple on my team this generation. So, and obviously it's not a new Pokemon or anything, but it's one of my favorite returning ones.
Yeah, I'm still shooting for that shiny Wooloo though. I've killed about 1,500,
Yes.
hatched at least 100, and nothing yet. So fingers crossed.
You're slaughtering sheep.
But as far as what Pokemon they did include, I think there's a really good variety there of old ones and new ones, and even those that are returning but have regional forms or regional evolutions. There's a lot of really interesting typings in the game, I think. I mean, we got a lot of like elemental bug Pokemon in this, which is really cool. I think my favorite one though has to be Toxtricity. I mean, electric poison. What the heck? That's such a unique combination, and it's
never existed before, right?
Not that I know of. And as someone who really likes poison types, I finally feel like it's at least somewhat viable now.
So how about you, Will? What are you making of the mix of old and new Pokemon in Galar? Are you satisfied?
I think so. Like when the controversy first arose, I was never really fazed by it for similar reasons. I have never remotely been a Pokemon completionist, and so that part of it seemed a lot more manageable. Though admittedly, when they did finally make the Thanos snap, so to speak, I was I was surprised by how many were cut, and some of them more than others were surprising as well. Like, I didn't expect them to cut as much from Gen 1 as they did, for example, or all previous starters except Charizard. Wow.
Yeah.
But,
bias pro Charizard stance from Game Freak continues.
and if you've seen Jim Sterling's mournful rant on the loss of Ekans, that's pretty much how I felt about Ampharos from Gen 2, R.I.P.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But we did get Yamper the electric corgi, so it's all good with me.
Yeah, that was awesome. We'll see with Ampharos, they needed all the attention on Wooloo this generation, and there's just too much overlap there.
Very true. Yeah. It's interesting for me because as I think I've gotten into in previous episodes, I'm more of a lapsed / filthy casual Pokemon player. So there's a lot of previous generations that I'm still not super familiar with, all the deep cut Pokemon there. So the variety does seem good from what I've seen as far as types. I still haven't found like the right team balance for me, but of course I'm like halfway through the game, so that's not super surprising either.
Yeah, I'm for the most part enjoying the blend of Pokemon. I never felt like I had a problem putting together a sort of balanced team with lots of different elemental typings. I think more so than ever before, you can build a diverse team early in the game as long as you're willing to really hunt around the wild area. So you have access to stronger Pokemon early in the game and more unique and rare Pokemon early in the game. It's just a matter of going out and finding them in this open world area.
Yeah, I think I had like an Axew like before I even started the opening ceremonies for the gym challenge. I'm like,
oh my god,
what the heck? Like dragons are always, aside from maybe Dratini and stuff, but they're like generally late game Pokemon, and here it is.
Yeah.
Like I haven't even started the gym stuff yet, and I already got a level 20. Like,
yeah, I think pretty much as soon as I entered the wild area, I caught a level, I want to say 15. What's the rabbit with like the big bicep ears? It's a ground type.
Yeah,
Diggersby or something like that.
Yeah, Diggersby. So that thing, it hits like a truck.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The rest of my Pokemon are like level 9 and 10, and this is an evolved form at level 15. But I managed to catch it in the wild area, and it was just right at the edge of what I was allowed to catch. So then I was able to just pound on everything with a Diggersby for a little while, and that was fun.
Well, and it was really funny too because you have access to the surprise trading pretty early on too, and I honestly I couldn't use them, but I got a level 60 Japanese Toxtricity in a surprise trade before I started the gym stuff. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I can't use it, but I could use it in raid battles, but I wish I could use this, but it's just too strong. But I was like, damn, that's really cool this early on to get a level 60 already.
Yeah, so I would say my one complaint, other than not being able to bring over all the shinies that I caught in Let's Go Eevee, my only other complaint would be I found that early on I was coming across all kinds of Pokemon that are good physical sweepers, right? They have really good physical attack, like you mentioned, Axew. And, when that evolves into Haxorus, I think it's got the strongest attack of, any non-legendary. So I kept finding Pokemon like that, but I couldn't find anyone worth anything with high special attack. And so I felt like my team was way too balanced towards physical attack early on. But then there was this kind of shift later in the game once I got some more badges where suddenly the wild area was populated by all kinds of Pokemon with really good special attacks. So I don't know if it's just an issue of me not looking in the right places earlier in the game or if it really is kind of balanced that way. But I thought that was kind of an interesting shift partway through the game. So what do you guys think of the starters? Who did you pick as a starter, and are you happy with your choice, or are you having some buyer's remorse?
You must be a psychic type, because that's exactly where I was going. So I'll take this one, I guess. I started with the grass type Grookey, obviously. I generally always go with the grass type, just partly out of tradition, partly because I just like grass type more than the other two types. But in this case, it had a lot to do with the design as well. I mean, Grookey is just adorable. And not that Scorbunny and Sobble isn't, because Sobble is too. I didn't care for Scorbunny too much.
I'm in the same camp.
But I don't know. I really liked the design of Grookey, and as soon as I saw him, I'm like, this is the one.
Yeah, and then the evolved form basically just looks like a Super Saiyan 3, so I guess I can get behind that.
Oh yeah, I was. I wasn't too fond of the middle stage, but that last stage, I didn't like it at first. Honestly, it went a little bit too far away from the cute little monkey I had, but it really grew on me. I really like the idea of having the drum and the drum based attack.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, cool animation. How about you, Will?
I, too, am rocking the Super Saiyan 3 Grookey Kong. Yeah, I was leaning toward Sobble at first, but then my sister claimed that before me, so I decided to mix it up. So,
sure.
But yeah, Grookey was a very close second choice. And I pretty much agree with everything Steven said as far as design. I also went with the grass type for Moon, but I think that's really just more coincidence. As far as buyer's remorse goes, I haven't really found a good water type for my team that I'm super into yet. So, and it feels like I've encountered more grass in general, but maybe that's just a weird lens thing on my end.
Yeah.
But, so part of me wishes I had gone with Sobble for that reason, but I agree. I really like the design and the movesets. And I will say there was so much hate for the fully evolved starters. And when I finally saw them way after the fact, I was like, what is everyone freaking out about? Like, I mean, they're
Yeah,
not
it's
all
just this game was wrapped up in so much anger that it's like every little thing was blown out of proportion.
yeah, like they're not masterpieces, at least not all of them are, but I'm gonna get roasted for this. It's not like every Gen 1 design was phenomenal either.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget great Pokemon like a mime or a pile of sludge or a Pokeball with a face on it.
Oh yes.
Or Magikarp.
Oh hell no. I kid.
Yeah, I was Team Grookey too, and I'm pretty happy with Rillaboom. It can have more diverse attacks, I guess. So I probably won't use it on like my final competitive team or whatever. But for the purposes of getting through the game, it was perfect.
Right.
And then as for the others, I can't get behind Square Buddy because I'm so burnt out on anthropomorphic fire types. Like, just give me something that doesn't like stand up on two legs and act like a human for the fire starter,
Right.
please.
Like I haven't even really played Gen 3 through I guess 6 in general, and even I'm burnt out on firefighting just from secondhand exposure.
Although I do like the designs of the evolve form a bit more. Actually, I think I might like the middle form a little better than Cinderace, but they're actually some of the more agreeable fire types in my mind. Like, I didn't care for, like, Incineroar at all, and I think I really haven't felt this way about fire types since, like, Cyndaquil, honestly.
Oh, it's all about Infernape. Infernape is easily the best fire starter, but it all went downhill after that.
I also really like Inteleon. Like, the first two Sobble evolutions aren't all that good. Or, I guess the middle one isn't that good. Sobble's okay, but Inteleon is, like, freaking just great.
He's the
He's
front man
all,
of the
super spy, James Bond kind of. And he's got like a finger gun attack, which looks really cool, and I mimic every time he uses it.
I also like that he looks like the bad guy from Monsters Inc., Randall or whatever, the chameleon.
I hadn't thought of that.
My takeaway was a front man of like an AFI cover band or whatever mid 2000s band you prefer.
So, what did you guys think about some of the new features that they added to Sword and Shield? There was Pokemon Camp with the Curry Dex, and there were the new Pokemon Jobs features. Did you guys like dabble with any of those very much, or did you just kind of stick to the main quest? Why don't you kick it off, Will?
I definitely like the idea of camp. It's nice. It's also nice to have that healing system kicked in the wild area when it's easy to not have easy to run out of healing items or not be close to a center. So I did somewhat agree with that thing you posted about how maybe it could have gone deeper with the rewards or perks or what have you, but I do like the idea of it. Curry Dex, I probably need to look up because I just have not hacked that yet. Like it's fun to do, but I've never gotten like a above Wobbuffet score.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really know how to get a good score consistently. I just kind of do it whenever I need some health or whatever. But
yeah.
And it's okay, but I feel like the novelty wore off pretty quick. And if they made it a little more, they could have made it a little more meaningful. Like you mentioned, I wrote an article recently at Nintendo Enthusiast where I kind of laid out what I thought they could improve if they were to make a third game in the Sword and Shield series. And so one of the things I said was, you could expand the whole curry mechanic so that it's not just like, oh, you eat it with your Pokemon and then it's gone. Why not have curry leftovers as like a usable item later with different stat perks or stat boosts, that sort of thing? Because otherwise it's like, I don't know, it just once you leave the wild area, there's like no point to the curry. So why do I want to make 100 curries that all mostly do the same thing?
I will say, as far as the camp goes, I did like a lot of the little random activities that the Pokemon get into while you're just letting them be. Like, I didn't even know this was a thing when it first happened, but I was in an NPC camp on some route, and it was a baby-themed camp, which I thought was a really cool way to show off different Pokemon varieties in game. And then just out of nowhere, the Pichu and Munchlax, they break into a race, and then Pichu wins, and they both have their kind of predictable reactions, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people share clips on like Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and yeah, they can get into a lot of cute interactions or funny interactions.
Yeah, I think I saw like a Drillbur race a Snom, and I mean, you want to talk about tortoise in the hair. I think my favorite one is actually I saw there was a Cinderace that was like really mad at a Togepi and it tried to kick it. And I felt so bad because Togepi is one of my favorites like ever. But someone actually edited that video to make the Togepi like fly toward the screen. I thought it was really funny.
I've seen the edited version. I didn't realize that was actually based on something real.
Oh yeah, just the foot goes through, so it's not all that exciting if you've seen the edit. But
yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I have noticed some of those animations really border into ludonarrative dissonance as far as like the firepower of some of those huge Pokemon. Like I'm blanking on the name, but there's some evolved Pokemon that carries a steel girder around, and so it's
just girder.
Yeah,
that's its name.
Was it? Oh, I didn't even catch that. Maybe the NPC nicknamed it or something. But anyway, yeah. Oh, that's great. Anyway, but yeah, I'm playing with it playing with the feather, and it just rams me with the girder. So I should be dead, but fair enough.
Yeah, I've definitely had some of my Pokemon come up and just like beat the crap out of me because they're sick of that bell. I don't know if any of them actually like the bell. It seems to make most of them violent.
I think that's the point. I'm not entirely sure, but like, it seems like I either throw the ball and they play with it, or they try and attack the bell. You know, I imagine it's like a cat toy. You know,
that's what I thought as well.
Except your cat is like a 1,000-pound whale that will crush you or something. Or like a literal god Pokemon.
Yeah, so I haven't messed around too much with the camp. I mean, it was really nice for like the Pokemon that evolved through friendship, which Snom took me forever. I'm glad that's over with. But
be nicer to your Pokemon, Steven.
I was. It was in my party. Like I was playing with it as much as like it just took forever. But yeah, I think like you guys said, it could have gone a bit more. I didn't really find much of a use for the curry decks and the curry mechanic. Honestly, I think part of that was, early on I was shiny Wooloo hunting, and I ran a team of 6 Meowth, and they all had pickup, so I was getting items all over the place.
Yeah.
But I've also never had a problem with money in this game. Like, I think even now I'm sitting at, like, over 800,000.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had enough to buy, like, what was it, 400 or 500 Ultra Balls at the same time.
Okay.
And yes, you do get a Premier Ball for each 10. So I got 40 Premier Balls out of that, too.
Oh, man.
So, I've never really felt like it was a necessary thing. And I also discovered early on that while it may be a bit slower, if you send a Pokemon into a max raid battle, they get fully healed and their power points are restored. Mm-hmm. So, at the cost of, maybe 1 or 2 attacks in a low raid, I could just heal whichever Pokemon I was using, as my tank and, have everything completely restored, basically.
You found the loophole in the system.
Oh yeah, no, I have completely broken the game with the max raids.
So, have either of you two experimented much with the Pokemon job system?
I did a little bit early on. I do like the idea of, what do you want to call it, grinding shortcuts, shall we say?
Yeah. Especially
because, like Steven said, we're adults, we're busy, and so. While I haven't done that as much, I like the idea of both that and the XP candy you get from raid battles, just because I've gravitated a little more toward that because I haven't had the patience to fill out Pokemon job lists. But I think both are a really good idea as far as just circumventing the grind and keeping different types of players invested.
Yeah, if you catch a Pokemon that's, really low leveled or whatever, it's like in past games, you could drop it into the Daycare to have it slowly level up in the background. And this is similar to that, except you can do quite a few Pokemon at once, and they'll also come back with like money and items. So it's just like taking that Daycare idea and really expanding it.
Dang it, Ben, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Perfect.
My bad. Didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, you're good. No, I was just going to point out that it's a nice, like you said, it's basically a faster daycare in the sense that you can utilize it more with more Pokemon, especially since, and I didn't realize this at first, but the daycares in this game are just nurseries. They aren't training facilities. You pay.
I didn't realize that either.
Yeah, you pay 500 per Pokemon to leave them, and that's it. Like, it's not, they level up and you pay 100 per level or whatever it is. Like, you pay a flat fee up front, and all they do is make eggs.
Nursery or brothel?
So I don't know if daycare is really the right term for that service, but they got.
Well, it's a nursery, they call it.
Rated properly.
Wink.
So there isn't like a true daycare. Like, you have the nursery and then you have the Pokemon job. So it's like a better. They just split those two functions up basically. But I've been really enjoying it. The only annoying thing I have, or the complaint I have about it, is that when the Pokemon are gone on their jobs, one, I guess it's two things. One, I never remember that I've sent them out.
Yes, same.
And so they just sit there for like a day before I realize, I'm supposed to, take these back. But also, kind of along that, is that they actually disappear from your box.
Yeah.
When they go. And so many times I've been looking to train something or to trade it or something like that, only to find out, that I don't have one, and then it takes me 10 minutes every time to remember that, I sent this off on a job, it'll be back at 8 o'clock,
Sounds like you need to manage your employees better, Steven.
I've never been the managerial type, so.
Yeah, I feel like they could, going back to the patch conversation, it would be nice if they could patch in some sort of notification on the Y menu, at least when you've entered a Pokemon Center, since that setup is right there.
Yeah, definitely. Another nice thing about the Pokemon jobs is, as you get a little later in the game, they start offering, jobs that give you better and better rewards, and they can add more and more Pokemon at a time. And then eventually, they add some jobs that are, I think they're labeled as training, and so you use these just to EV train. So, like, you can just drop off 10 Pokemon for health training or whatever, and then for every hour that you leave them in training, they get 4 EVs. So it allows you to just kind of, like, quietly EV train a whole bunch of Pokemon in the background. And then, like you mentioned, Will, they have the experience candies, which you get in pretty large amounts when you do raid battles and stuff. And, if you're trying to build a competitive team, you got to get everyone up to level 100, and that can take forever. But you can use the Pokemon jobs to take care of the EV training for you, and then you can use candies to get your Pokemon from, whatever, like level 79 all the way up to level 100 if you want to do that. So they've done a whole lot of things to streamline the process for people like me who take the game way too seriously and take all the fun out of it with math. And I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I didn't even notice the EV thing that you mentioned, but I think that's a good idea.
It might not be open to you yet. You might not have enough badges for those to be available to you.
That could be it. Yeah, but I appreciated that about Let's Go as well, that they had that IV main item that made that whole process a lot easier, because I remember I got like back into Pokemon several years ago with Soul Silver, which is still probably the best one for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but then I remember friends were talking about EVs and IVs, and I had no clue, and I think that kind of scared me away again after that gen, because I was so lost.
Oh, well, they had been around long before that. It's just, most people don't pay attention to them, and you don't have to pay attention to them at all for the main game. So I would say probably the biggest sort of selling point or marketing point for this game was the wild area, right? So we didn't get like Pokemon Breath of the Wild like some people thought we were going to get, but they did set up a pretty sizable chunk of the map to sort of function like that, complete with a camera that you can control freely, which is, not something we're used to in Pokemon. Do you guys think that it sort of lived up to the hype, or were you not hyped at all going in anyway? Did you have reservations? How did the wild area pan out for you? We'll start with you, Steven.
Well, I'm going to be honest here and say that I honestly didn't know much about the wild area going into it. I knew it existed, and a little bit about, oh yeah, you can find wild Pokemon there and the raid battles, but that was about it. And then I got there because you get there before you start the gym stuff, because story
Sure.
stuff, and I stayed there for about 20 hours
Oh wow.
before doing anything else progression wise. Um, so it really, I mean, and this was just the early half too, like the first half, and the
Yeah,
lower
before you
area
cross the
stuff.
bridge to stronger Pokemon.
Yeah, I think most of that was spent shiny hunting Delibird of all things, but
Oh yeah, you can easily spend 20 hours doing that.
For sure.
yeah. But yeah, no, it was great, and they had each little region in the wild area has its own weather, which affects what kind of terrain you're on and what kind of Pokemon spawn. I remember getting really ticked off because at midnight when the weather changed, the Delibird was hunting were in like the level 13 to 15 range, and then they moved into an area where they were like level 30, and
Oh no.
because of the cap on catching stronger Pokemon until you have enough gym badges, then that kind of put a stop to my shiny hunting there. And I think that really kicked me into gear to get the story done, so I could go back to that. But
So you
um,
can finish the true point of the game, which is catching a shiny Delibird.
oh yeah.
Oh yes.
But no, it's just it's very varied. They're just the types of Pokemon that appear in different weather are just change with the weather and certain. I really like the ghost area, for instance. There's like an
Mm-hmm.
old ruined watchtower, and all the ghost Pokemon hang out there, and so it's just really cool just to see the variety of different areas in there. I think it's a really nice little feature that I would love to see them expand on in future games.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Will?
Yeah, agree that I hope they expand on that. I think it's a great idea that also really encompasses my very mixed views on the game in general.
Mm.
Because like going into it, I knew like kind of the bare minimum, but it was still really breathtaking to have this Pokemon game up on my decent size TV screen and have full camera controls in this
Mm-hmm.
generally open area. That was just like that takes you back 20 years to what you imagined this being, and it's something else. And so from from that perspective, I thought it was a really cool idea. Then we've kind of touched on the level caps before. As many others have said, it really feels like an overcorrection that they already had an in-game solution to with that Pokemon disobey you past a higher level until you get more gems. Like that
Sure.
seemed more than sufficient to me. So it was just really a buzzkill, like running into a Snorlax for the first time and seeing that it's just one level too high for me to catch.
Well, yeah, and especially because there's not. I mean, certain Pokemon they're big, and so you can just kind of tell they're gonna be too powerful. But I kept having this problem early on where I'd just like go into the grass, not even like a path area. I'd go into the grass and just run into some random Pokemon, and it would be like, oh, this thing's 15 levels too high for you. It's like, well, how was I supposed to know that before engaging this battle?
Yep, and now you've been one shot. Bye.
Yeah, unless you have a doll on you.
Yeah.
Although I think I'm not actually as upset about that as most people I think are, because if I'm not mistaken, that gym level limit thing is only for traded Pokemon.
Right, but they could have easily, made it not that way. They could have just made that the sort of universal cap instead of adding a second cap.
Well, right. I mean, I'm not saying this is the only way they could have done it, but I mean,
Sure.
given that this is how they did it, I mean, I think it makes sense that it's there to, really try and keep you around, in theory at least, around the level you're supposed to be.
Right.
There are other ways they could have done it, but I don't really have a problem with it. But that's just me.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I've spent a ton of time in the wild area. Like I said, it's great to be able to just sort of move from region to region and see all these rare and powerful Pokemon early on in the game. But like you will, I've got a lot of reservations too. I kind of feel like this is an awesome beta. I can't wait for the full version of this to come out.
Exactly.
That's the feeling I get from the wild area.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you Steven, you mentioned that ghost tower, and I agree, it's like really cool. And then every time I go up to it, it's like, okay, well, I'm here and I can catch, some ghost Pokemon, but that's about it. There's like, I can't go into it and investigate it. And that to me seems like, a missed opportunity, because if it's, if you just have this big open area with Pokemon, that's cool. But if you also fill it with interesting locations, interesting things to see and do other than just catching wild Pokemon, then it's going to be a lot more engaging.
And one thing kind of on those lines that I wish I would have done is that not only can you find Pokemon running around, but if you're connected to the internet, you can actually see other trainers. Yeah. And I think that was a big missed opportunity to have some sort of more connectivity there. Because as it stands, you can run up to them and they'll just give you a cooking item, and that's about it. Or they'll be there and be like, hey, why won't anyone join my raid battles? And so I think, given that Pokemon is all about, connectivity with other people, with the whole trading mechanic and everything, I feel like that could have been implemented a bit more in the wild area. But
well, and like Let's Go made it so you can play the entire game co-op if you want, just by picking up a Joy-Con.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be interesting if you could just run around co-op with your friends in the wild area. Like, if, add people to your friends list and then hook up with them. But, as it stands now, it's like this isn't too surprising for a Nintendo published game, but the online features are not particularly robust and they don't always work. I've had times where, I'm talking to a friend and they're in the wild area trying to start, a max raid battle or whatever, and I can't find them. I can't connect to them. And so it seems like it's still having the same kinds of online issues that a lot of Nintendo games have, unfortunately. And like you said, it's missed opportunity. There's so much potential for cool social interaction with a game that, like you said, was always meant to be about bringing people together and having them connect. So it's just another example of like, oh, this could be cool, but hey, when's that patch coming, Game Freak? 2 years from now with a $60 price tag, probably. And then also another thing about the wild area, of course, that was heavily criticized before the games came out is some visual issues, like a certain infamous tree trunk. And I think I said on a past podcast that, this is like an early build at E3 or whatever, and they'll probably pretty up the textures before launch. They did not. The ugly tree trunk is still in the game, and it's copied and pasted everywhere, so there's like 1,000 ugly tree trunks. And obviously this is not a game-breaking experience for me, but it's one of these things where it's just like, come on, Game Freak. Like, the entire internet mocked you over how bad that texture looks, and then you just decided to leave it in there. Like, I don't really know what to say about that. But in general, it's like this game got a bunch of criticism for not being pretty enough or whatever. And for the most part, I disagree. Like, there are some beautiful cutscenes in this. Like, some of the cutscenes showing like Gigantamax battles and stuff like that looks great. It's like the best the series has ever looked. And the towns look pretty good. I would say I like Let's Go's look better just because it's a little cleaner and a little smoother, even if it's less detailed. But then you get to the wild area, and there's definitely a distinct drop in quality. Nothing looks as good in the wild area as it does in towns or in cutscenes. And of course, there's going to be some sacrifices made when you have this huge open area, but it's like, it's like 5% of the size of like the Breath of the Wild map, for example. And, it's nowhere near that visual quality. So just another example where it's like, there's potential here, but this game needed a few more months in the oven.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, like you said, some of the towns are gorgeous. I mean, I can think of Ballinley comes to mind. They're in the forest with all the pretty mushrooms and everything.
Oh yeah,
they're absolutely gorgeous. And then the wild area just kind of craps on it a little bit. Even then, though, I didn't have too much problem with the visuals. It was more my problem with the visuals came when I was playing in handheld mode, where things just they weren't so much jagged, but you could tell that there was a difference in how the game was running a little bit. In handheld versus in docked.
I haven't noticed as much with handheld and TV, but I probably just haven't been paying attention to that. I definitely have noticed a lot of frame drops in the wild area, and I don't know if it's because they're trying to load so much open space or if it has to do with the amount of player avatars around, maybe a little bit of both. Aside from that, my only real visual complaint for the game overall is probably textures. Like it does feel like 3DS graphics with an HD facelift. But yes, I do love the overall world design. There's just a lot of gorgeous areas and a lot of that. So it's a great game that feels like a rough draft in many respects.
Yeah, when it comes to lag, I would say if I'm in the wild area and I'm connected to the internet, it's pretty much always lagging.
Hmm.
If I'm not connected to the internet, it's pretty much always smooth, except when like transitioning from one weather type to another, there's usually like a couple seconds where it kind of needs to adjust from like, oh, we just went from blizzard to sandstorm, and then it kind of smooths out from there. But yeah, when you're trying to play online and everyone else is running around and biking around in the wild area, it gets pretty choppy.
So one thing we haven't really touched on so much with the wild area is the raid battles.
This is true.
Have you guys been messing around with those any? Or
Yeah, so I would say I fought most of them alone, just because a lot of the time when I try to invite people, I just kind of end up sitting around for a while, and maybe people show up, maybe they don't. So if I've got like a strong enough team and I've got a type advantage or whatever, then I'll take them on alone. But like other times, I've been on like the phone or messenger with friends, and then we can sort of coordinate like, oh, I'm going to go to this point in the wild area and try to do this battle. And usually we've been able to link up, but there have been a few times where it's just like they're just not popping up in my game. The invite just isn't there. But that said, when it works, it's pretty fun, and I feel like they do a really good job of giving you a lot of cool and expensive rewards to sort of make it worth your time.
I agree. I really like the gameplay of the battles overall. Dynamax is very satisfying whenever you do get to do it, especially with the special Dynamax forms like Let's Go Pikachu or Eevee or the Mystery Gift Meowth. Love that.
Long cat.
Yes. But yeah, as far as connecting with people, I think that really shows off one of the weaker parts of the game. Just even by Nintendo Online standards, so much of it is the opposite of intuitive. Like I had starting it up, I didn't know about the default local wireless settings. So
Yeah.
and when you back out to the Switch home menu, there's this little icon on the Wi-Fi signal, assuming you are on wireless. And I had no idea what that was until I looked it up and realized I wasn't actually on the internet. And it's just
I did the same thing.
yeah. So I would say like 60% of the time I remember to connect when I start up, but yeah, that threw me for a loop. I didn't understand the message system for the longest time when it came to joining other raid battles. I finally managed to join a random friend on that, and that was satisfying once I got it to work. But yeah, for a franchise that gets so much criticism for holding your hand, it's like a complete opposite this time around, at least in that regard.
Hmm.
especially with some of those higher level raids too, that if you try and solo them, it's sometimes near impossible
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
because
sure.
the AI they pick for your teammates, they just like
Garbage.
they make the worst possible choices. Like one out of every 3 battles, I have a Wobbuffet on my team, and it will literally just do nothing because it just counters and mirror coats and all that. And then
Yep.
usually the other two are like Clefairy and Togepi, and all they do is heal. So
Yep.
I'm not gonna be able to take this thing on by myself. So
Especially when they like bust out this huge impenetrable shield that takes like 8 hits to get through.
Mhm.
right, and then you have the feint limit as a team, and so
Yep.
even if I'm fine, I can't do anything about my idiot AI partners. Like so just 2 turns in and 3 of them are already dead. Okay, well that was a waste of
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting if you could challenge more trainers to battles in the wild area, like NPCs that you sort of encounter throughout the story, and then maybe recruit them as AI partners. So, like, if you can't find any friends to join online, you can just kind of like go through the list of trainers you've defeated in the past and be like, hey, want to join my max raid battle? I think that would be sort of an interesting way to spin that beyond just, we're going to assign you like 3 Clefairies. Have fun.
Yeah, now that you mention that, it reminds me of the feature from Gen 2 where you could get the phone numbers of certain trainers and do rematches with them every now and
Yeah.
then. I thought that was a cool idea at the time, and it surprises me that they really haven't kept that up over the years.
Yeah, they had the Versus Seeker in some games, but not quite the same.
Yeah, and then as you said, the rewards for doing the raid battles are pretty nice too.
Yeah, I love that you can get the sort of one-shot TMs, the TRs. Those are great.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of broke the game a little bit with the
boy.
raid battles. I think I was about maybe 4 or 5 gyms in, and I had just gotten a Whale Lord, and like level 48, 49, something like that. And I had just been like hoarding all my candies, and I was able to like immediately get it up to level 100 in like 20 seconds just by using all my candies.
I mean, you also gave it diabetes, but it was very strong.
Yes. Yeah, so that was really fun, honestly. Because it's not often that I get a level 100 Pokemon, because my interest usually, peters out by that point. So just
sure.
And just the immediacy of it too. Just like, oh, you're 47. Okay, now you're 100. Like okay, this is a little broken.
It's like when you've already beaten, the whole game, and then you add like a level 1 Pidgey to your team and go beat some level 60 Pokemon, and they just level up 30 times in one go.
Which is something I really like about the wild area post game. I don't know if it's really spoilers, so I won't say what happens, but wild area post game is a little different than wild area like mid game, and I think it's a really interesting, a really nice change for all that post game play.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I was very shocked when I figured out what it was, because I went back to hunting Wooloo, and all of a sudden, things happened, and I was like, what the hell? And then I realized that, this must be because I'm the champion now.
Sure. And eventually will understand.
Yes. Oh yeah, one other random observation. The first couple times I was in the wild area, I completely forgot about the left stick whistle feature. So yeah, no Xatu or Butterfree for me. I was completely lost on that.
Whoops.
And then we talked about, the clips of people goofing off in Pokemon camp. Like the clips of people in the wild area are just as good.
Oh, I bet.
I shared a video of a bunch of, what are they called? Excadrills chasing me because they Naruto run.
There was another viral one. They captioned it "Five Nights at Freddy's," and it was a bunch of Beware chasing the player.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorites was someone found a Curlia and did the spinning animation, and the Curlia spun like in response. I thought it was just like the little details like that really make the game for me.
Yeah, and despite all of my, reservations with this game and all the times that I've referred to it as a beta in the last 40 minutes, I don't agree with the people that say that, Game Freak's lazy, or, this game has bad animations. Like, there's so much love put into this game.
Exactly.
It just feels like it was made by a loving development team who, needed an extra 6 to 12 months to do all the stuff that they wanted to do.
Yes, exactly.
So another thing we haven't talked about much at all really is the story. And like I said, we're gonna keep any late spoilers really vague for the sake of the audience, and also for the sake of Will, who is a dirty casual and hasn't beaten the game
thank
yet.
you.
Well, to be fair, it's not like the story does anything, up until where he's at anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, the thing about Sword and Shield's story is that you kind of forget it exists until the end. It's definitely focused way more on the whole world building aspect. So I'm going to start with that. We can talk about the sort of like background plot a little more later. But what I enjoy is that they kind of early on keep the focus on the gym challenge. And unlike previous generations, for the first time, this really feels like a Pokemon League to me. Like, to get in, you have to get like sponsored from someone else in the league, and then once you're in, you get a jersey and you get to stay in fancy hotels. And Pokemon gym matches take place in these giant stadiums full of cheering fans, and you can turn your Pokemon like the size of Godzilla and have these giant fights. Like, they really make it feel much more like this nationwide sporting event that defines the culture. Whereas in previous games, it's like, yeah, everyone talks about Pokemon all the time, but it kind of felt like there was a disconnect from all these 10-year-olds going around fighting gyms and like the rest of the world. And in the Galar region, I really feel like this is the Pokemon League is a sporting event that everyone in Galar loves, on the scale of the NFL in America, or soccer, or I guess football would be the correct term, in everywhere except America. So that was something I really appreciated, that maybe necessarily doesn't go down as like storyline in most people's minds, but it's really good world building, and it helped immerse me in that world.
Yeah, I always had a problem with the early gens, because they're really, I felt like this one, because of that setting, there was almost a sense of urgency, like, oh, you have to, get to the Champions Cup, by the time it goes on. Like, because in sporting events, they set these things in advance, and if you're not there and you're not qualified, then you don't participate. And there isn't a timer or anything on that. I mean, you get there when you get there, and it just happens when you get there. But it just, because of that setting, it felt more like oh yeah, this is an actual thing that's going on. Whereas in past gems, I just imagined the Elite Four sitting around for weeks on end with nothing to do, because no one's there to challenge them.
And I also enjoyed how the third gym leader, I believe it is, gives a speech about how he's basically the first real challenge, and it's his job to weed out the weak people that don't belong and don't really have a shot at the Champions Cup. So I like that idea that this is actually an elimination tournament. It's not just like, oh, you can go to your local gym, once a week and throw your Rattata at them and lose again. Like, no, this is an elimination tournament event, and you need to go through and beat everyone back to back to back to back if you're going to qualify for a chance at what is this culture's equivalent of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I thought that was, they did a good job with that leader of selling the idea of tackling each gym challenge in order, because I was really skeptical of that, and kind of still am at first, because I'm like, well, that has to suck for trainers way up north, that they have to go all the way down to the starter town and then start the challenge from there. But it is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah, and I've always wanted a Pokemon game where almost open world, kind of like a Link Between Worlds did it, where you can just go to whichever gym you want first. I mean, I think it was Pokemon Origins, like that little 4-episode OVA thing they did to introduce Mega Evolutions. Like, if you remember, if you've seen it, like the first episode when Ash goes to fight Brock, or I guess it's Red, when he goes to fight Brock, Brock's like, oh, I see you don't have any gym badges. I'll use this team of 2 weaker Pokemon. So it implies that, if he had maybe 4 badges, that maybe he would have been facing 4 Pokemon that were in, their mid-30s or something. And I think that ever since I saw that episode, I'm like, this is what I want out of a Pokemon game. I want to be able to go do the gyms in whatever order I want.
Yeah, that was a great idea.
Be able to, have those gyms scaled to where I'm at. And this is obviously not that, because, as you guys have said, that it's very much an elimination tournament. There's a very specific order set out by the Pokemon League that you have to do these gyms in. And it's based on the trainer or the gym leader's ability too. So the first one is obviously going to be the easiest, and all the way up to the last one, which is going to be almost champion quality. So yeah, that was a really nice touch for what they did. I really enjoyed that.
I think part of what drew me back into Pokemon with Sun and Moon was I thought that the lack of gyms made a really interesting change of pace in structure for the game. So So I found myself wondering, well, man, do I even want gyms in future Pokemon games? Like, how can they really reintegrate that? And I think they found the perfect way to do that, especially for a UK based region. Just, yeah, let's make it a giant soccer league. Perfect.
Yeah, and we also get this sort of both ends of the spectrum where in Sun and Moon, they're trying to build a Pokemon League. So they have these island challenges that are sort of prototypes for gyms. And then, you get to Galar, and this is by far the most fleshed out league we've ever seen. So it's like one game is just like, hey, maybe we should try this league thing. And then you get to the next game, it's like, oh, we've got that mastered. It's our national pastime.
And that's something Sword and Shield did really well compared to even the non-Sun and Moon gens, is that, the Pokemon League always felt like, oh, it's this thing, it's just there. No one was really actively going for it. And here you have a number of trainers and rivals alongside you that are, fighting to stay in this tournament and, go through this together. And it really, at least for me, helped immerse me in the world of Galar.
Yeah, the rivals point is good because having it be this more sportsy format really hammers that rival point home to me. Because I've seen how absolutely fanatic people can get about rooting for one side, and therefore having a rival. Like as a Packers fan living near Chicago, all of my friends are Bears fans, and so I understand the concept of a rivalry pretty well. And I feel Sword and Shield were able to hammer that in better than any previous game. And then, we won't get into too many details because of where Will's at in the game, but, Team Yell is kind of then put into this game as this portrayal of toxic fandom when supporting your team goes too far and you're just becoming a nuisance that is making the sport worse for everyone. So I thought that was fun to bring up too.
Exactly. A lot of people dumped on how non-threatening Team Yell was, but I loved that concept exactly as you describe it.
Yeah, and that's the point. I mean, they're not supposed to be an evil team where, oh, we're gonna take over the world and free all the Pokemon from captivity, and that's all they are. They're just rabid fans who just get in the way of everyone else.
Yeah,
and I think that really highlights my my love of what Sword and Shield did with at least this part of the story. That one of my major complaints in recent years is that despite generally liking a lot of story in games, like Pokemon had too much story in my mind. It was always, kid goes out, saves the world from legendaries and yada yada, and this just gave me a reason to just relax a bit and just have fun. I mean, every step along the way when story stuff happens, all the adults are just like, no, like, we'll take care of this. You have to focus on the gyms. And I honestly really liked that because I feel like, it really lightened up on the story and really addressed what I thought was one of the biggest criticisms I had about Pokemon in recent years.
Yeah, and the problem with it being so story heavy in past generations is that, this is a game targeting like 8 to 12-year-olds as its primary audience. So it's not, lots of story isn't necessarily good story. It just means lots of text, and lots of text meant for, a reading level that hopefully all of us surpassed at least a decade ago. So it's like, and it's fine. The story's not really, I'm not the primary audience. I'm not expecting them to have this, amazing story that's extremely well written. I'm not expecting a Scorsese plot in my Pokemon. But like you said, it was nice that at least early on, it's a very slimmed down story. It's just kind of like, there's these two legendaries from long ago, and there was this calamitous event, and they were all involved some way, and you don't really know much more than that. You're busy focusing on your gym challenge, and along the way you bump into some more stuff that kind of gives you hints about this ancient event and how it might relate to your present and future. But like you said, it's like Sonya's like, hey, I'm on this, I'm gonna investigate this, I'm gonna find out about it, and so you stay focused on your gym challenge. And without getting into too many details, that kind of changes at the end where they throw a whole bunch of stuff at you last minute with very mixed results, I would say. I came out of it still not really thinking it made much sense. I feel like there's some puzzle pieces missing and some characters and creatures that need more background for this to be particularly meaningful. But I definitely appreciated throughout most of the game that the storyline was streamlined in a way that, like you said, I can focus on the gym challenge and I'm not being interrupted by these walls of text that are, repetitive and not written in particularly interesting text.
As far as the gems itself goes, it's also my understanding that they don't really do anything with the minor leagues that they mentioned early on.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a problem with that. Like they talk about it a couple of times, and I'm like, I really want to explore this because there's this whole side of the gyms that we don't see, and I just really wish that they had found some way to work that in.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind for me was in Saffron City Gen 1, excuse me, they have the fighting dojo, which was either like a sub gym or got usurped by Sabrina, something along those lines. I I thought that was a cool idea, gameplay wise, because it was like just a minor thing, but you got a cool Pokemon out of it, Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan. So they could set up maybe a similar thing with, if not unique Pokemon, then like unique moves or TMs, some kind of reward that is satisfying but continues with the already good strides they made in world building.
And I think that would go really well with like an open world thing too, because they could use that as say the shrines in Breath of the Wild, where you don't have to do these, but if you go out of your way and find them and explore, then you get rewarded for it. I think that would work really nice, actually.
Yeah. Steven technically praised Breath of the Wild. Woo!
That was not Breath of the Wild praise. That was just me using that as an example, okay?
I kid.
Yeah, for those not aware, Steven is a heretic and doesn't enjoy Breath of the Wild, but we let him on our show anyway.
Love you.
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that I thought it would be cool for there to be more NPCs to encounter and to fight with out in the wild area, and I think that would be a perfect way to introduce these minor league trainers, where like that ghost tower, for example, depending on whether you get Sword or Shield, is it the fourth gym, I believe, you'll either get a fighting type gym leader or a ghost type gym leader. So why not have the one that isn't in your game be out there somewhere to encounter as an NPC, training their team, trying to get stronger, trying to get into the major leagues, because they're sick of being minor leagues. They're sick of not being the ones getting broadcast on TV to screaming fans, right? So to me, that feels like a bit of world building that they could have really explored that they just didn't. I'd love to go to that ghost tower and encounter Alistair like out there catching a Dusknoir or something like that. That would be really interesting to me, instead of just kind of like name dropping at the start, like, oh yeah, by the way, there's like 10 minor league gym leaders that you're never gonna see again.
And it's not so much it's not so much a story thing. I had a couple quick points. I really like the gym missions, because again, kind of going into this, the gym leader's there to test your skill in battles and make sure that only those who are really worthy and ready to go on, progress. But you also have the gym missions, which test, other aspects of being a trainer, or, being a farmer. But
yes,
yeah. If you don't know the first gym, you heard Wooloo, and that was just great. But I think my favorite one, honestly, was the third gym, where prior to facing the gym leader, you actually had to do a little bit of like a catching challenge, where there were 3 trainers in there, and you don't fight them. You fight wild Pokemon at the same time, so it's a 2-on-1. And then you have to get points based on whether you knock the Pokemon out or catch it. And I thought it was actually I was surprised that I was able to keep the Litwick I caught in there. I assumed that it was just going to be like, oh, these are here just for the purposes of the gym. Like, you catch it, get your points, and then they're gone. But I got to keep it, which I was very excited about.
That was the only one that I failed to catch, unfortunately. But I thought that was a really interesting idea, the risk reward of that challenge.
And the fun thing I noticed, at least in one battle, because I was a little over leveled for it, but the one battle, my opponent actually attacked me instead of attacking the other Pokemon. I'm like, oh, this is was not expecting this.
That's how you want to play this?
Yes, as soon as I realized that was a thing, in one of the battles, I did just go ahead and KO the other trainer's Pokemon, thinking that would,
Ruthless.
because I was a little frustrated at that point because it also turns out that if the other trainer KOs it, you get nothing and you have to reattempt it. So
Yeah.
I figured loophole, I'll just take them out and focus on the other guy, but nope, if you do that, they just throw in another Pokemon, so you can't escape.
Yeah, that was cool just because, it made you think strategically. You're not normally put in a position where you're like, oh man, I need to think about whether I should defeat this thing or catch it, and I need to think about what moves my opponent is using, because what if I weaken it, but then he, finishes it off, right? So that was interesting. Pokemon gyms usually don't they make you solve puzzles often. They don't usually give you, like, battle-related brain teasers like that.
Yeah, there were. I think there after about the fifth gym, not so much I got tired of the concept, but it felt like they were just kind of treading old water at that point.
Yeah.
That some of the later gyms were just like your standard. Oh, just beat a couple trainers and then go fight the gym leader, or do this secret maze hidden in the snow. But up until about Gym 5, I really felt like they had some really good variety there, and I would love to see them expand upon that a bit more too.
A couple of minor gym notes myself. I really like the beginning of a gym leader battle. The first thing that I noticed in Gym 1 was that, unlike literally every other Pokemon battle in the franchise, there isn't like a swipe away graphic or whatever you want to call it. It just like zooms in on the gym leader mid cutscene and is like, we're fighting now. I
Oh
just
yeah, that's a good point.
something about that, just it was like a really nuanced cinematic decision that really impacted me for whatever reason. But yeah, I really like that. And then the other thing, maybe it's just me, but the way the music shifts when you get to the gym leader's final Pokemon and they go Dynamax, it
Yeah.
it loosely reminds me of Splatoon soundtrack material in terms of quirkiness. And
Honestly, that
just
whole track does.
yeah,
Like that is a banging track.
yeah,
Yeah, I really enjoy some of the like gym or champion cup related music, the kind of the techno beats and stuff. It's sunk in more than I thought it would. Like, it's very catchy. I find myself putting it on in the background sometimes when I'm writing. It's good. I
I
like it.
think, yeah, I assume Sword and Shield missed the threshold for Game Awards, but I hope at the very least that gets a soundtrack nomination next year.
Mm, yeah.
I also felt like for as over leveled as I was, I think this actually goes back to one of my other big complaints with prior gens was, in this gen that there's like the permanent experience share for your team, and
Oh yeah.
I always hated that because I'm like, no, like I'm using this one, I want to train this one only, but I found in this it really inspired me to. Mess around. I mean, between that and having access to your box everywhere, which is also something I used to complain about all the time. I found out that I really like the ability to customize my team for each specific gym. I mean, I never felt like I think there from about Gym 4 on, I used literally like an entirely different team in every gym.
Oh wow.
Um,
It's dedication.
yeah, for to mixed results. And I think there were actually a few gym fights I had trouble with.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think it was, well, the last one was more of a leveling thing because I was a little lighter on level than he was. But I kept it in because of type advantages and stuff. But I think or at least a couple of the gyms did really good about, we know that our chosen type has a weakness and we're going to work around it. So the fairy gym, for instance, has a Mawile on her team,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, I mean, granted, I kind of stopped with X and Y, so fairy is like the type I'm least familiar with, but I do know poison's good against it, so I'm like, I'm just gonna go like throw poison at this entire team, and then she sent
Yeah.
out Mawile. I'm like, damn it, it's part steel. I can't
Yep.
do this, and it took it took out a couple of my Pokemon before I was able to whittle it down enough to get it. But I'm like that.
Yeah, that's a good defensive typing.
Yeah, and it just and there were I think Alistair might have done it, and one or two of the later gyms might have done it. That they just like dual typed their weakness away. Yeah. And I was like, the thought of the team composition, I was very pleasantly happy and challenged by.
Yeah, definitely.
I also didn't realize that Top Hat Weezing was a fairy type until that battle. So
yes, also same.
You do you, Game Freak.
I was going to say, the last point I want to briefly mention before we wrap up is kind of going back to the story stuff. We talked about the world itself, but the characters, I think, are some of the most likable ones I've seen in a Pokemon game to date. With the exception of Bede. I don't like Bede, but
Bede doesn't get enough time to really shine. But he's definitely meant to be kind of annoying and two-dimensional early on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, once we get into spoiler territory, things change a little bit, but I don't think Bede got enough development. And I see everyone seems to hate on Hop. Yeah, and I think it's a little unfair. I think it's just because early on he is the tool the game uses to deliver early game exposition and world building to you and tutorials and that sort of thing. And it's once you get past the first hour and a half or whatever, and you get out to the wild area, I think he's a fine character who has an arc where he kind of grows as a person and everything. So I think people just kind of soured on him early because walls of text. But even then, he's way less bad than anything Sun and Moon had to offer for walls of text.
That kind of reminds me of how I feel about Fi, the companion character in Zelda Skyward Sword.
Oh, yeah.
She got a lot of grief because that game was very, especially handholdy, especially early on, and she's the poster child for that. But I really enjoyed the character overall. By default, she has more personality than Navi. Fight me, internet. But But yeah, she had the execution was definitely didn't do her justice, or it didn't make her look good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think, even Bede at the end of the game, spoiler free, I feel like all of the characters or all the main characters have a conclusion to their story. They all have stories that are running alongside yours, and they all conclude, and they all have development over the game, which is something I feel like past games haven't really done all that much. Sonya, I can't say because spoilers, but it's just great to see kind of where everyone, not just you, but where everyone started and where they wind up.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, I think that about wraps it up for our discussion. A lot of good, a lot of concerns. Maybe Game Freak will patch some things in, or maybe like we've discussed, they'll release a third game instead. Either way, I think we can all agree these are very fun games, but a little bit missing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess my bottom line would be it's a very fun game. It's hard to mess up the core gameplay of Pokemon when you get down to it. Just either you're into that or you're not. And I, at least for the main game, I tend to enjoy it when I do sit down and get to it. I think the game's biggest sin was simply that it wasn't this big revolutionary flip the script type thing along the lines of Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey for its first Switch outing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, people had very high expectations. Okay, well, that'll wrap it up for this episode. You can look forward to another one a little later in the month. We're not going to take as much time off before the next one. So we'll be doing a sort of end-of-the-year wrap-up article where we just look back on all of the first-party Nintendo games throughout the year and just kind of reminisce a little bit, maybe do some Game of the Year type stuff. Until then, thank you all for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Erimgard, ERIMGARD. Steven?
Let's be real. You just shouldn't follow me on social media.
All right, fair enough.
If you want to, it's at Red Rollins Yum on Twitter, like the Red Robin commercial.
Oh, I get it. Okay, yeah. I'm on Twitter at Awk043. That's AWK043. I I'm not super exciting, but I do like to tweet Switch videos from time to time.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And thanks to everyone at home listening. Until next time, bye.